Greetings. My name is Harpreet Gujral. I'm a nurse practitioner here at Rose Wellness. We'll today be talking about thyroid health. The title of the topic is Tired, Foggy, and Frustrated, what your thyroid may be trying to tell you. We know that thyroid is a very important organ. Today, we'll go over understanding, first of all, what is the basic thyroid physiology and what kind of hormones it produces, and understand what are the common thyroid disorders. Recognize symptoms that indicate thyroid dysfunction, even though your blood work might be normal. And understand the relationship between thyroid health, stress, hormones, transition, especially in women with perimenopause or going through menopause. Our goal is to provide you with practical evidence-informed insights so you can optimize your thyroid health. So what does thyroid do? Thyroid, as you know, is a small but very mighty gland that is right in front of the throat, in front of our neck. And it's a butterfly-shaped gland. So if I were to examine you and I have you swallow, I could see and feel your thyroid gland um, and located in the neck area. This regulates our metabolism, our energy production. It can affect our mood and growth. And there are many symptoms that can actually indicate that there is something going on with the thyroid. So we know that thyroid dysfunction is a lot of times missed or underdiagnosed. Symptoms can be dismissed because your initial TSH or thyroid stimulating hormone test is looking normal. Or it could be said, a lot of times patients will say, I think maybe I'm just getting old, and she or he could be 50 to 40 years old. And I just have to remind them, like, no, that's not, you're not getting old, and you should not be feeling this tired. There has to be a reason, and we need to really, figure out the root cause for the symptoms that you're experiencing. So a lot of times the routine labs will be normal. And you are not imagining these symptoms. These are truly happening when you are, tired and exhausted. So just for context, how common are thyroid disorders? There are 20 million Americans who actually have thyroid disease, and they may not even know it. So 60% of people don't even know they have thyroid problems. Mostly women, about 5 to 8 times more common among women than men. And a lot of places where there is iodine sufficient countries, hypothyroidism could be an autoimmune reason for the thyroid. Meaning, if we are consuming a iodized salt, in our daily food, then and someone is still having thyroid issues, most likely it is autoimmune, which is named as after Hashimoto. So it's Hashimoto thyroiditis. Uh, Common conditions for thyroid are either hypothyroidism, which is underactive thyroid not working well, or hyperthyroid, which is overactive thyroid. And then third one, as I mentioned, is Hashimoto thyroiditis, which is autoimmune issues. So, what are the symptoms of hypothyroidism? And you may have already heard about it or experienced it yourself, or may know someone who's going through these symptoms. And because these symptoms could be multifactorial, when you have fatigue and you have weight gain, you're experiencing brain fog, you're feeling cold intolerant, having bowel irregularities with constipation, noticing dry skin, the hair is dry, mood changes like anxiety or just sleep disturbances, can't fall asleep or wake up in the middle of the night, periods that are irregular, and muscle ache and weakness. It could also affect your immune system. So there are lots of symptoms people are experiencing, and that can be confused or as something else. So we might say, well, this must be perimenopause, and we might miss, if we just did one test for thyroid, we might miss hypothyroidism. So it's really important for us to recognize, how is thyroid, hormone pathway work, and then figure out what kind of testing should we do to determine where this issue might be coming from. So this is a physiology lesson. So real quick, I will share with you. So thyroid hormone pathway. And first of all, hypothalamus in the brain actually controls and releases what's called TRH, or thyrotropin releasing hormone. This message gets to the pituitary gland still in the brain, which then releases thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. That is the most common test that is being done to check for thyroid condition. Then this TSH will help thyroid gland to create or produce T4, which is thyroxine hormone. T4 is the most abundant hormone that's being produced, and it is inactive, meaning it needs to be converted through enzyme activity into a T3, which is the most active form. And T3 holds the key for our metabolism, and it holds the key for our energy. So a lot of times when we are describing as weight gain and tiredness, etc., it's really important for us to understand what is going on with not just your TSH, but what is happening with the T4, what is happening with T3, that conversion from T4 to T3, and also understanding that seesaw balance between T3 and reverse T3. So T3, as I mentioned, is the activated pathway that gets into the cells and holds the key for energy, whereas reverse T3 actually slows that pathway T3 down so that it does not go excessive. So it's like a seesaw balance, and reverse T3 is in active form that does not bind well to the receptors. It can block the T3 action at the cellular level. So that way there is not excessive T3 being produced, just enough to just right number amount to make sure the body is functioning well. And thus this negative feedback loop occurs. Next thing we see is, when we do the test, as I mentioned, a lot of places are just getting the TSH done. And so when your TSH produced by your pituitary is looking normal, we don't know what is happening with T4. We don't know what is going on with T3 or reverse T3. So even though TSH is a signaling hormone, it's not a thyroid hormone. And this can be affected by our stress levels, if we have an illness or we're taking certain medications, or what time of the day we're getting our blood drawn. So ideally, we always encourage people to do this in the morning first thing, but it doesn't give us an insight to what is happening with the gland and what is happening with the tissue level or cellular level. How is the thyroid hormone sufficient or not sufficient? Okay, so why labs miss the problem? As I mentioned, TSH is one of the screening tests, and a lot of times TSH, it'll say TSH, and then only if it is abnormal, they will collect a T4, check a T4. If TSH is normal, then it doesn't. We may not collect your T4 and miss out on the condition of thyroid condition. So that's why normal labs does not mean optimal function. When I sit down with patients and we're looking at blood work and it's looking optimally, TSH is normal, but when we look at even the T4 or T3 is resulted as normal, but with functional medicine eyes, with that lens, we are able to let this T3 is actually not optimal because it is still in the lower end of the normal range. So suboptimal free T3, I see that a lot, and that there are many reasons for it. And then there is also some people will have elevated reverse T3. And remember, we talked about how reverse T3 is the opposite of the T3. So this shows that why people will still have persistent symptoms, even though their original initial blood test, which was just TSH, comes back as normal. Plus, when we treat people just to give them T4, monotherapy or levothyroxine, it may not be enough for certain people where they're not converting from T4 into T3. And that's why it's really important to understand what are the root cause and what is the driving force for why T4 is not converting into T3. And we can only find that out by actually testing for these labs. right? So comprehensive thyroid testing, as I mentioned, we must get a TSH done, thyroid stimulating hormone. So we're testing, what is the cue from the brain coming through? And then we check for free T4, which is going to tell us what is the thyroid doing, how much thyroxine it is making. Then we check for T3. Free T3 will give us a triiodothyronine. We'll measure the active hormone in the body. And then we also measure reverse T3 to make sure is that there is a good balance and is a conversion, is optimal, and is there any additional stress or gut disorders that could be driving the reverse T3 high, and also it can lead to thyroid antibodies, which are called thyroid peroxidase antibody or TPO, and thyroglobulin antibody or TGA antibodies. So this is important because what happens is even long before someone can have abnormal T4, abnormal TSH, long before people can actually start developing thyroid antibodies. And I'll explain in subsequent slides when there is gut issues, there is a disruption in the gut lining, in the tight junctions, and that can actually lead to our immune system, which is 60% of immune system resides in the gut, and that can affect it. So looking at reverse T3, which as I mentioned, is the inactive thyroid hormone, when T4 with the right, conversion, it will convert into T3, which is the active hormone. And then there is always enough for it to also be inactivated T3 to make sure that there is that nice balance between the both. This is important because when reverse T3 is being made because of whether it's gut issues, is being elevated, this could be because, then people are finding that they don't, because it's inactive hormone, they're finding that they're not having enough energy, even though it's in place to create more protective response. So there's a balance between T3 and T4. High T3 or high reverse T3 actually can create slow metabolism where people are tired and exhausted and they're not making adequate amounts of T3. So that's why reverse T3 is really an important test to be also measured in the whole context. So we talked a little about Hashimoto thyroiditis. We said it is an autoimmune condition, and it is the most common form of hypothyroidism. And we define those two antibodies, the thyroglobulin antibody and thyroglobulin antibody and thyroid peroxidase antibodies that are present. We measure them and we trend them. We check to see over course of time how those are trending, whether they're going up or down, etc. And then these can be affected by various factors. So what are the triggers for autoimmunity? Well, if someone has stress, that can affect it. If someone has gut issues, the tight junctions between the gut, when they start to loosen up, things can flow through, things can go through and create this immune response because we have our 60 to 70% of our immune system actually resides in the gut. So it's constantly tracking what's going in, what's coming in, what's going out. And when the tight junctions in the gut lining, are disrupted and there is more leaky gut you might have heard of, then a lot of times the autoimmune issues will occur where the immune system is tagging and the antibodies, both TPO and TGA, either or both, can actually be elevated. Infections can do that. Toxins like mold toxins can do that. Gluten sensitivity, even if it's in the absence of celiac disease, if someone is just sensitive to gluten, they also can have issues with autoimmune thyroiditis. So let's go over stress, how stress affects our thyroid. We know that each of these systems are interrelated, right? So when we are stressed, we actually our adrenal glands, which are two little cashew size glands that sit over the kidneys, one on each kidney, and they produce cortisol, which is helpful and healthy when they're produced in the right amount and at the right time of the day. However, during stress time, we start to produce high cortisol levels, and that can actually lower the signal of thyroid thyroid, so thyroid doesn't function as well and starts to produce less and less of the hormone production. Also, it will inhibit conversion of T4 into T3. It will increase the amount of reverse T3 being made, and it can cause this thyroid hormone resistance because there is this balance between T3 and reverse T3 is slightly getting lopsided with more reverse T3. So that's why, simple things for stress reduction can be really important, can be really helpful. Unfortunately, we are living in the times where stress is quite elevated for a variety of reasons in our society. And it is really important to look at stress as not something that's ongoing, everybody has it, whatever. It's really being intentional, and it's really figuring out how is that affecting our body and what other systems are being affected by our stress levels. So thyroid issues, in the gut setting, what happens is, as I mentioned, when there's gut dysfunction, like people have dysbiosis, they have inflammation, they've got leaky gut or poor digestion, burping, bloating, constipation, etc. That in turn leads to autoimmune dysfunction of the thyroid gland. It can increase inflammation. It creates imbalance between T3 and reverse T3 and how much T4 is being made, etc. And people start to noticing symptoms, a variety of symptoms that we just reviewed earlier. So that's why, gut issues can actually, as I mentioned, intestinal permeability is off. We're allowing a lot of things, toxins and other undigested proteins to enter through the bloodstream, and that can trigger our immune system. We have dysbiosis that can be because of gut bacteria is off, and some of our good guys or commensal bacteria, and the balance between the bad guys is off. That can actually also worsen our thyroid problems. Chronic inflammation, nutrient malabsorption, when we have less vitamin D, less vitamin B12. That's why we actually check very comprehensive blood work to understand what else is happening, and then impaired detoxification. When our gut is, not eliminating, we're constipated, we have toxins that are not being eliminated. This can actually lead to our body not being able to eliminate estrogen and other hormones in a timely manner, more efficiently, and that can affect our thyroid in turn as well. So healing the gut is actually key to help with thyroid issues. So we also talked a little about toxins. So toxins or mycotoxins, which are mold toxins, and thyroid dysfunction. When these mycotoxins, which are toxins made by the mold, there are several different kinds called aflatoxin, ochratoxin, trichothecene, zearalenone, etc. These are present in water damaged buildings. They can be in our food. They can be in our environment. And when I say water damaged building, this could be simple as, oh, I had a leak in the sink, kitchen sink, and someone came in and mopped up, and we got it treated, we got it cleaned up. Or the dryer, was leaking into the basement, or the humidity was so high in the basement that, things were looking like, there was like white discoloration, a little bit on the wood, etc. And, otherwise there's no problem. Well, all of those things can actually affect that person who actually is more likely to be affected by mold toxins and can actually have that mold toxin just circulate in the system and not be eliminated. Whereas 80% of population can eliminate that mold toxin, that those 20% of people may, if existing issues with gut dysbiosis, etc., and if they have liver overload, they have already existing inflammation, oxidative stress, that can also affect our thyroid gland, and our thyroid function gets disrupted. That's why it's really important to also be mindful and intentional about what chemical toxins are we surrounding ourselves with, what's in the house, how do we clean our homes, what about carpets, what about cosmetics, etc. Heavy metals can be huge: mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, etc. So really important to make sure that we are drinking water that's filtered. We are, our air is filtered, so we're not inhaling some of these heavy metals. making sure that we're not getting, those, dental work is safe. And then other exposures like CMF, PMF, like plastics, like cigarette smokes and pollutants, etc., can all affect our thyroid gland. So thyroid can be, it can be a bystander when someone is going through hormone changes. For example, in a perimenopausal woman, a lot of symptoms, as I was describing earlier, are very similar to perimenopause. And I have had the good fortune of being able to treat close to 1,000 or maybe a little over 1,000 women with both perimenopause and menopause. And I see it day in and out that people are noticing their hormone shifts. They're noticing fatigue, brain fog, exhaustion. The weight is increasing, even though their diet is the same. They've been exercising. Their sleep is disrupted and the mood is off. They find themselves to be, it's little things can actually trigger. Also noticing that they're having word finding difficulty. So sometimes people think like, oh, this is just depression. This is my anxiety. This is perimenopause. Oh, this is part of normal aging. Oh, I'm just stressed. I guess this is just part of being stressed. So that all can lead to us kind of dismissing it ourselves, or even if we go in to get seen in conventional medicine, we might get dismissed because there are other, these symptoms can be considered vague and they could be attributed to something else that's going on. So it's really important for us to be intentional and be aware of managing both the hormones and thyroid and looking at the person as a complete person, as a whole system, and not different organs. And also in menopause and thyroid, hypothyroidism actually is more common during perimenopause and after menopause because of the hormone shifts that's happening. And in fact, 60 to 70% increased prevalence happens when women are transitioning to menopause. And that's why it's really important that we are looking at the symptoms, we're doing the right testing, figuring out so we can actually do the right treatment once we have the right testing. So how do we test? Well, first of all, as I mentioned, full thyroid panel, so we understand all from brain to thyroid to what's happening with the reverse thyroid, what's happening with the thyroid antibodies as well. And then we check for nutrition assessment. We want to really be curious about what is happening with a variety of different nutrients, if there's any deficiency. And I can tell you, we here at Rose Wellness test a lot of different nutrients, and we also do very comprehensive nutrient assessment, and we find time and again people having nutritional deficiencies for a variety of reasons, whether it's gut related or it's genetics, etc., or it's diet. So it's really important to also do gut testing. For example, GI map, we do GI effects. These are different specialty tests to look at, and I will show you some of the sample reports. And we also check hormones because the dry urine hormone to check for metabolites is really crucial to understand what is happening with whether this woman or man, what is happening with their hormones, so we have a better understanding of helping support them. So this is a sample report of what's called Dutch test, dry urine test. And so this is a complete, basically it gives us, even though it looks very complicated, we go over this with you, when we sit down with you and go over your personal report. So it's not necessarily a cookie cutter approach because we really need to know what exactly is happening with you and what are your tests telling about how do you handle hormones, how are they metabolized, are you are there any gene issues where the COMT gene or methylation issues. So we get a very detailed understanding of how estrogen breaks down into different metabolites. Is it safe? Should you be considered for hormone therapy or not? And how are you going to handle it when we are going to give you hormones, if those are indicated, and if that's what you would prefer, because we know that's another webinar. But in perimenopause, we know that we can actually keep the woman much healthier, protect her bones, protect her heart, protect her brain by considering hormone therapy during perimenopause and not wait until much later when she has already gone through menopause and the damage has been done over the years in terms of osteopenia, weakening of the bones, also plaques in the brain and in the heart. So it's really important for us to take a proactive approach and understand what is happening with the hormones. We also get a very good understanding of the cortisol pattern. So as I mentioned earlier, when people are stressed, there are certain hormones that are being made. The adrenal gland is producing DHE and cortisol, and that can also affect how the body is feeling, how our symptoms are. Some people feel very anxious and fatigued. Some people feel wired and tired. So really understanding what exactly is happening with their tests, so we get an exact picture, and then we're able to treat, through that lens of having additional information. This is the gut testing, as I was mentioning. It's called GI map. This is a very comprehensive test where we check the stool. We look for if there's any C. diff, any toxins. We look for Helicobacter pylori. We look at commensal bacteria, the good guys, the bad guys. What is the ratio between the two, etc. And then we treat accordingly. So we don't just put people on the same treatment or same medication. We really understand what exactly is going on with this individual, unique person, and then create a tailored approach for them. So it's really important to have that treatment approach that's tailored, that is specific to that person based on all the results, very comprehensive history, understanding and listening deeply to what the person has to say, and then making sure that we are replenishing hormones if that's what's is the missing link. We help person optimize their conversion of T4 into T3. We look at how do we drive down this autoimmune issues if they're having autoimmune issues for Hashimoto with the antibody being elevated. So we have different protocols to help manage that. And then we also support the adrenal gland, so the stress is better mitigated, and we can, ensure that the adrenal glands are optimized and not being over, putting out over stimuli, excessive cortisol, and then, it's not able to keep up eventually, where people just are exhausted and are not able to do even normal things. So really important to understand where is this person, on that spectrum, and how to help support them. So combination therapy is very individualized, very unique to each specific person. We do encourage people to look at comprehensive treatment. So avoiding gluten initially, for sure, adequate protein, strength training. We work on stress management, optimizing their gut health, their hormone health, etc. This is one of the patients. This obviously is a picture from ChatGPT. It's not our patient per se. And I've changed her name, but this patient is a 47-year-old female, very high stress job, very high, up in the ranks, and she's a sandwich generation. She's got parents who are aging, who live close by, and need some help. And she's got two teenagers who are also, she finds that are testing her patients. So she is really working towards optimizing her health, but she came to us because she was exhausted. She would wake up first in the morning and say, if I could just help it, I would actually go to bed now. She had noticed her weight gain, just all her clothes in the closet were no longer fitting her. So she's like down to 10% of her wardrobe, and really is not feeling herself in that body that she's experiencing with the 15 pounds weight gain over the last 2 years. And she's eating the same, she's working out, she's definitely having irregular periods. So we knew that she's in perimenopause, but also notices her mood is off. She was very concerned because she was having rage, would get very upset, and she knew that her reaction was way beyond, the situation. And so she knew there was something that's going on, that she needed to get help. When she came over, she was quite, upset, frustrated, and embarrassed, because she was having also brain fog and forgetting a lot of, things that are coming naturally to her at workplace, and even forgetting some of her team members' names, etc., which was quite, frustrating. and bothersome to her. So she also was diagnosed with Hashimoto thyroiditis 3 years ago, and she's been taking levothyroxine, and she was, TSH was normal range quotations, but when I saw it, it was like 4.3. And we know that we checked other labs as well. When we checked, we knew that she was definitely suboptimized. We did functional testing approach. We got a comprehensive testing. She underwent a very thorough blood test, a Dutch test, and a GI map. And we were able to then figure out, how best to support her. We were able to connect the dots for her. I mean, that's how we do, with functional medicine, the root cause, not just putting some band-aids and giving someone a prescription and saying, okay, good luck, we'll see you in, 6 months or so. It's really important for us to understand what is happening. When she was able to see that chronic stress that was going on and how her HPA, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, was affecting her high cortisol, which then affected her conversion of T4 to T3. She understood her gut dysbiosis. We were able to find there were some, from previous travels, etc., or just with chronic stress, her gut microbiome has shifted, and she actually had some of the gut bad guys, dysbiosis. So we had to treat that with, and also support her leaky gut. We were able to calm the immune system activation because we saw her antibodies were elevated, thyroid was inflamed. Also worked on her perimenopause to really get her to balancing the hormones. Initially, she wanted to just, pause and try something else, like a non-hormonal approach. And then a month, 2 months later, she was, open to trying the estradiol patch and the progesterone. So it was really important for us to understand, because we got the Dutch test, we understood then the poor estrogen detoxification, because that can lead to inflammation, can cause cysts in the breast, etc. So it's really important before someone starts on the hormones, to understand, like, how are they metabolizing their hormones, what is happening in the gut, etc. So we can actually go through this nice deeper approach. And we knew that her symptoms were not something that happened overnight. It's been ongoing for a couple of years now. And so she knew, I usually tell people, like, it is not an on-off switch, it's a dimmer switch. It will slowly come up. It's slowly going to get brighter, but we have to be patient, and we have to really connect the dots and figure out, how to support, her. So with the right treatment, she was able to feel so much better. It took several months to be fixing all of those things that we just talked about. So in summary, I want to just to talk about our takeaways. We understand the thyroid is central to systemic regulations. It affects many different body functions. We know that symptoms can be subtle, confusing, overlap with other conditions. We know that TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is not a good test to be done by itself. We must understand whole tissue level thyroid function by checking other labs as well. And autoimmune disease needs more evaluation of the gut and the blood test markers. We can't just expect to fix the thyroid by, just giving them only T4 or even T4, T3. But if we know that the gut isn't doing well, we're not going to really help the person at a deeper level. And we know that midlife women are at increased risk for compounded endocrine instability. And it's really important that a whole person system-based approach is utilized as opposed to just going to one organ and fixing that. So with that, I hope you found this to be helpful, and we are very interested and happy to support you if you have similar symptoms and have felt like, oh my God, like this is what I need to be doing. I've been gaslit, I've not been listened to, I've not been heard. My treatment or testing has not been very comprehensive. We would love to support you. And our phone number is 833-767-3935. So it's 833 Rosewell, Roswell. And we are accepting new patients, so we would love to see you. Please also feel free to schedule a free consultation with our wellness coordinator. And we have this on the slide, so you're able to see the link So you can contact us and schedule that appointment. I look forward to supporting your health journey. And, I'm just very passionate about seeing what happens when people come in and slowly working on various aspects and getting people feeling better. So thank you for your attention, and we look forward to supporting your health journey. Thank you.